All right. Well, we've still got a few minutes before we're technically started, but we are streaming live on Facebook. Welcome everyone that's on Facebook. And anyone who's on live watching on Facebook, go ahead and pop your name in the chat so that we know you're there. We've got a very exciting evening tonight. Mynoo will be bringing us the third commandment. So I'm excited to hear more about that. I think they just keep getting richer and richer. Welcome, welcome everyone. Hello, David. Nice to see everyone tonight. I'm Catherine, for anyone who doesn't know me. I think I know pretty much everyone. And I host the Thursday evening calls with Mynoo. And I know that everyone on here knows Mynoo. What an amazing opportunity we have to be graced with her wisdom every single week. So I have been in transit from Maui to South Carolina, where my dad had his 95th birthday, and I have landed back in LA. So my new home. I'm feeling Sean's energy because he's my landlord, friend, neighbor, right next door. So welcome everyone tonight. If anybody wants to chat before Mynoo comes back on, feel free to just unmute yourself, and you can also pop anything that you want to say in the chat box, either way.
Okay, I'm back.
Mynoo, welcome everyone. And we're going to go ahead and get started right on time. It's 5:30. I finally am in the same time zone that most of the friends in LA are in. I was always like 2:30 Maui time and then 8:30. I don't know. It's been crazy with all the different time zones, but here we are. I'm in Mynoo. I was about to say Maui. I'm in Los Angeles, and Mynoo is in Mumbai. So welcome, welcome. And we can't wait to get started with the third commandment. I'll turn it over to you, Mynoo. We've already kind of introduced you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. And you're going to take care of the waiting room in the background?
Yes.
So yes, welcome everyone. Good morning from me and good evening to all of you from the City of Angels. So this commandment is the third of the 10 commandments for the new world. And as you've heard me say before, these 10 commandments, rather than advise on how you conduct yourself, they come from a space of supporting and holding the container for the self-actualization of every human and humanity itself. So what these 10 commandments are, they are the foundation, the characteristics of the foundation on which we are emerging into the next phase of our life. And they're here to stay for a while, just like the previous ones were, for many, many centuries. So the first two that we've already completed were unknown is the known, and uncertainty is certain. And both of those are from a logical mind perspective, are such that they can destabilize us in quite a significant way. And yet, the wisdom that we all received was how we work in an environment where unknown is the known and uncertainty is certain. And take it in our stride and actually leverage how we move forward. Now, added to that is this third commandment, which is change is constant. And what I find quite fascinating is how there's a play of words as well. I mean, change is what is constant. As opposed to things are constantly changing. And I see why this languaging has come through. We are so attached to getting some form of stability or getting some form of, understanding of what's to come about. So we are always seeking some things that are constant. And even I have been known to talk about, listen, guys, in business especially, I always say, look, one of the strategies is to minimize the variables. Find as many constants as you can. And what we are getting here in this commandment is at a foundation level, the constant that we are presented with is change. That is the constant. Now, right from the first commandment itself, one of the things that we've been trained on, and you've heard me say this all the way from the time that Catherine and I began these series, which is all about unconditional acceptance of what is. So rather than beating ourselves up about, we should be adaptable, we should be flexible, we are actually going to use this unconditional acceptance of what is strategy across the board. There is nothing to beat ourselves up about, ever. There never is, and there never was, and there never will be. Even if it is something that we've done or said that we regret, well, we are choosing, we make a choice. We are exercising one of the three innate things that we are born with, innate gifts that we are born with, the gift of choice. So, rather than beating ourselves up about becoming too attached to holding on to what might be in the past, the strategy of unconditional acceptance of what is has us observe. Now, when change is constant, that is the constant. So when I say to myself, I feel blessed that I have the gift of working with these things, a little bit longer than when it's time for me to share it with all of you. So when I'm working with this, I had to make a shift and a switch in my own mindset of minimizing the variables, where the variable was always related to everything that is continuously changing, and recognizing that that is the constant. My lack of acceptance was the biggest variable that I was dealing with, and that was destabilizing me. And those of us who've been in the technology field, from the time that computers started taking over and they started spreading, I come from an era. My background has been as a software developer. That's how it all began. My career began. So I'm like a bona fide propeller head, if you like, and I can get very propeller headish when I'm with these technology developers. Even now, there's a little bit of sprinkling of spiritualness in it. So we were very present to this stuff that was changing all the time, When I began my career, we actually even had punch cards. And literally within a matter of weeks, the punch card technology was no longer the technology that we were dealing with. We were dealing with these humongous computers that filled up a whole room. And those humongous computers just went into a computer that only occupied a dining table. Like, oh my goodness, how can that be? And then that dining table became a small desk, and that small desk became this sewing machine size, portable computers that you walked around with, building up your biceps. And in literally within a very short time, that sewing machine type thing that you carried around became literally a laptop that you could put on your lap. And that moved forward to become a handheld. And so we were very aware of this. These things are constantly changing, but it was always attributed to, okay, we're comfortable with technology, so we can cope with it. And there was a reason for it, because the technology advancements were taking place. And that reason became, a constant, if you like, for me and others like me. We could attribute the change to a particular reason. It allowed us to accept it. There was a because justification for this continuous change. We could, allow ourselves to adapt and learn new skills and all of that. So being in an environment where things were changing constantly was a muscle that I became pretty good at exercising. But there was always a reason, always a justification for why that was. And that allowed me to be in my center and go on and work with that constantly changing environment. What's different about this time around is there is no justification. There is nothing which says things are changing because. And that's why it has got a commandment level status, if you like. This statement of change is constant. There is no justification. It's just so. And in some ways, it's a logical conclusion. If unknown is the known and if uncertainty is certain, then change is constant. It's like a very logical next step. So 7 is a number that I have been, presented with, and I've worked with a number of times. And I thought, okay, if we have the 7 steps of working with and in an environment where change is constant, what would they be? And what I received as an intuitive guidance was, it's not about the 7 step. This is a foundation level thing. So just like if you're talking about a desk or a table, you can having a desk or a table with 2 legs isn't quite stable. Having it with 3 legs is reasonable. But if you had one with 4 legs, it's actually solid. You can stand on it. You can put really big, heavy things on it. It's really solid. So what are these 4 pillars that we are to understand and embrace in an environment where at a foundation level, change is constant? The first pillar is feeding and nurturing the insatiable desire to understand what are we talking about here that many of us humans have. So the first pillar is about understanding what is this change that is now going to be constant. And the change that I'm talking about here, that is constant, it's a full spectrum change. It isn't one or the other. What do I mean by full spectrum change? So literally, if you are to sit back and observe, what is this change that we are talking about? You will notice the changes that are taking place in your physical environment. And your physical environment, when I say something is full spectrum, and I'm talking about your physical environment, I'm talking about your physiology, the physical environment within you, as much as I'm talking about the physical environment outside of you. the mental space as well is changing. And you will find yourself, I mean, look at what this amazing phenomenon of the crown has enabled and made happen. Like at a mental level, this extended period of lockdown or shutdown and not knowing whether it's good to go out or stay in and all that stuff. And suddenly, all makeup and all that is replaced by face masks and glasses. And it's actually normal to see people put on a PPE kit. I mean, like literally from a rebelliousness, that is how it began, when it all began. And looking at people wearing masks as, really awkward people, to it becoming normal to put on a mask. And we are starting to get to be at peace with it. We're starting to get to be at peace with so many different things. Now that's the shift in our mental space. And it's interesting, again, the choice of words is quite important. I said a physical environment inside of you and outside of you. And I said mental space. One of the things that gets us into a mental frenzy is often the lack of space. The lack of space that we give ourselves to emerge. Now, space is also like a container in which you can experience the frenzy, but no, you're still held in a container. And there have been moments of some interesting frenzies. Some of the rioting that was taking place in the early part of the lockdown in Venice and Los Angeles, where it looked like, oh my God, people are, mayhem is being let loose. There's a recalibration that is taking place. So the mental space is another area where change is taking place. And the third aspect of the spectrum is emotional state. So from physical environment to mental space to emotional state. So there's a change in our emotional state. And the change that is happening in the emotional state, there is a higher proportion of humans who are now understanding that responsibility is actually their responsibility, their ability to respond. And when they go into when they operate from an emotional state where they're looking for things outside of them to solve their issues, to solve their problems, their ability to respond diminishes greatly because there's a big unknown that comes in that is out of your control. So the emotional state change is an understanding and a knowingness of a sufficient number of humans across the planet, and we've all played a part in this, and Catherine, you leading the way in hosting these sessions and me showing up consistently, bringing forth the wisdom that is so pertinent for this time, has certainly helped that the change in that emotional state where people are not seeking peace. They're actually becoming present to gratitude. And for those who have worked with me for years, and Catherine, you certainly have heard me say this from 2013 onwards, and I've been saying it since 2010, that gratitude is the key to peace. Peace is a consequence. So the change in the emotional state that has occurred, if you are to observe it, and it's happening in more ways than you realize. there is a recognition of some of the things that we were seeking outside of us, like peace. It had to be something outside of us, an end of war or removal of a particular leader of a nation or whatever it might be, to actually recognizing that peace is a consequence. And when something is a consequence, you become the leader of the action to take for that consequence to arise. So the peace as the consequence comes from gratitude, and that is the change in the emotional state that we are talking about. The change on the spiritual side is a move from organized religion. There is deep respect I have for organized religion. And I also know that spirituality is the connection and the reconnection to spirit. And it is the spirit of everything, beginning with the spirit of us, which is what we often term as spiritedness. So the spiritual change is a rise in the reconnection to spirit. Spirit of ourselves, spirit of another, spirit of nature, of other living beings. And I call it the crown phenomenon for a reason. I call it that because, just by the crown phenomenon coming in, and in the way that panic frenzy and fear mongering that spread so rapidly across the world, thinking that that was actually going to be social distancing. And initially it needed social distancing for us to come home to ourselves, at which point it transformed to physical distancing and social camaraderie across the planet. And that switch took place when that connection to the spirit of everything became more prevalent. And it just so happened, because of the social distancing, many of our congregations spaces, like temples, like our places of worship, they just had to be closed down. And people came home to the temple that is who they are. My God, in this time, that the Palace of Extraordinary Miracles, the poem, is in fact our own physical being. There is a newfound respect that emerged for our physical body as the temple that houses our spirit. That is the change in the spirituality side that has actually come about. Social distancing has changed to social camaraderie. One world family has emerged. Whether you may be consciously aware of it or not, there is one thing that unites us all. And it is living through this very odd and strange time on the planet. Across the planet. Even if you were someone who was engaged in being completely addicted to news coverage or social media shares, and feeling upset and hurt by what you were seeing, you were still united with another who was in their center, completely at peace, because we were all witness and in the middle of this phenomenon that literally opened up our crowns. And that's created this social camaraderie of a family that is a global one. I often used to say that, as technology, and I attributed it to technology, that what technology has enabled is you don't have to be multinational to be global. And actually, it is a technology of being human that has enabled that we already are global. And just like in any family, when a family goes through something that is quite a challenge and they just stick it out through thick and thin and ups and downs, they just stick it out. And that becomes a unifying fact for years and decades to come. That is what has occurred across the entire world. That's the change that has become constant, the social camaraderie. Social distancing opened the way, paved the way for social connectedness despite physical distancing. And the distance doesn't matter anymore. I mean, I'm certainly so present I could be anywhere in the world. Every week, the amount of connections I'm having with my, global family. And here I am in Mumbai. So that's the social change. Environmental change. This change that is constant, that has been anchored, is evidenced by the ability of nature to reclaim itself, that we have all witnessed throughout this time, beginning from March all the way until now, and it's occurring more and more. From the blue skies with fluffy clouds that you've heard me say again and again, to the pristine, clean, clear waters of the Venice canals, to peacocks in apartment blocks, to the olive turtles filling up the sandy beaches of Orissa, to the hundreds and thousands of flamingos just outside some of the biggest slums in the world in Mumbai that I've witnessed. I've witnessed all of these things. I haven't witnessed the olive turtles other than on videos, but I absolutely have witnessed the flamingos and all of that. The fluorescent waves on Venice Beach. The number of rainbows, it was as if the world had suddenly got this rainbow fetish, were being shared everywhere, including outside Mumbai airport. There was this humongous rainbow and we had them often. So there's, that is the change that we are witnessing. Now here's the other piece to remember. Yoga had already become, an international presence. And one of the things that yoga does, there's always, you listen to any yoga teacher, somewhere or the other, they'll always throw in that, you create that memory of the posture. Get that cellular memory of the posture, and you can always return to it, even if you haven't done yoga for a long time. All it takes is creating that cellular memory, and you can always get back to it. So what has occurred with this nature reclaiming itself? The cellular memory activation has taken place across the planet. So even if momentarily, as I'm witnessing here, the traffic jams have begun in Mumbai, not as ferocious as they used to be, but they're there. So there can be some anxiety around, oh my God, it's going to get really polluted. The place will get polluted again. Well, there's a cellular memory of what it took for nature to reclaim itself. So as with everything that has been created by the Creator, the Creator's job is to create, not to repair, not interested in the repair work. So therefore, when the Creator creates, the creation has the ability to autocorrect itself. And what had occurred at a nature level was the attitude of humans had gone to such an extent, and the attitude of humans that I'm talking about that had actually, extrapolated was the attitude of fixing things and feeling that in fixing we get our progress. That bubble has burst. And nature has reclaimed its ability to resurrect itself and to reclaim itself. And humans have had an opportunity to be in a quiet space for an extended period of time, reclaim their ability to respond, coming from the strength of being human, which basically has got that cellular memory of recognizing the true nature of ourselves. And the moment even the phrase nature comes in, the cellular memory of our ability to reclaim ourselves is kicked in. That's the change that we have to look forward to. So a cellular memory, as Bucky Fuller put it, of a world that is a world that works for everyone, has been activated. Not only has it been activated, it has also been anchored. So this is the first pillar of the change is constant foundation, which is, what is the change that has become constant? And you can literally take every element of what I've talked about and allow yourself to go into a space where you notice the change inside of you, outside of you, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, and environmentally. And every sighting of that rainbow, every sighting of those fluorescent waves rich in planktons that lasted over such an extended period of time, every sighting of that, whether it was online or in person, transformed our own environment, our terrain within. And if you've ever done live blood analysis, any of you, and if you haven't done, give yourself the pleasure of experiencing it. It's quite something, like every dot of blood is alive. And I've used live blood analysis sometimes when I've been doing my live journeys, just to see the difference of before and after of certain processes that we do. And there was a particular experience that people went through when we would go to this particular waterfall, I called it the Rainbow Waterfall, and at a particular time, and Catherine, you were there to witness this and experience it, at a particular time, we would time ourselves to this 4-hour-long drive and get there, and then that long walk to the bottom of the waterfall, and suddenly the sunlight would be positioned in such a way that the place would fill up with rainbows. And we actually did live blood analysis, just that witnessing of that phenomenon. Literally, blood cells that had, that were sticky and even had fungus and all sorts of stuff floating around when you looked at it through the microscope, just cleared out within moments. Now you can imagine how many such moments we've all had an opportunity to witness. So there is an internal environment of ours, which is our own physical terrain has transformed. That's one of the pillars that we are anchoring. That is the change that we are anchoring. Now let's look at pillar number 2. Pillar number 2 is, the title that I'm getting for this pillar is unreasonable. And unreasonable as the title doesn't mean that it is, excruciating and pressurizing. It actually means without a reason. And those of you who are a part of my business collective, who implement these 7 pillars of extraordinary results, one of the practices that we do is go make unreasonable requests, and make 6 unreasonable requests before breakfast if you want to have a breakthrough in any particular area. And that's not making requests that are so out there. It really is about learning to make a request because you choose to. So the unreasonable pillar is about returning to choice, expressing and exercising our choice, and honoring ourselves in the choices we are making because we choose to, and stepping away from having to find a reason for everything. This pillar is foundational for us to step into the realm of allowing. Abraham has been talking about it is the art of allowing. And this unreasonable pillar starts to get you to feel familiar about doing something because you choose to. Think about it. Think about Henry, your dog, Karen. Think about Bella. Think about Sophie. Think about, your pets or animals out there. They really do practice the art of allowing. They don't go into, I have to get excited when my mama comes home. But there is no have to. They don't have to get excited. If they're upset because you've neglected them for a while, well, they'll be upset. They don't go into blame. They are in that state of allowing. Grandma zebra, in the wild, wakes up in the morning, shakes off, and off she goes for a run. Doesn't huffs and puffs about, oh, I've got to go find my own food and there's nobody actually there serving me. She just goes for it. Grandma human wakes up in the morning. Often there's a bit of huffing and puffing, there's creaking and aches and pains and denture if you're wearing a denture or whatever it is. And that's all because there is something outside of us that we are seeking to make us feel fulfilled. There's a reason, oh, I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed. That's why I'm grumpy. Well, what if in this foundation where change is constant, one of the things that you are invited to release and let go of is having to find a reason for everything. Well, whatever you find a reason for today, change is constant. It won't apply tomorrow. What may be a reason for Catherine may not be a reason for me. So what is the reason? What can you hold on to as a reason? So what if you actually didn't get, what if you released the attachment to a reason and allowed yourself to be present? And what are you being present to? You're being present to honoring yourself in the choices that you make. So this pillar of reason that, that sits underneath the foundation of change is constant is in fact an invitation for you to release reason. And if you do find a reason and you find yourself very engaged in discussing the reason, unconditionally accept that's where you are right now. And allow yourself to be released from the guilt about it. The third pillar that sits underneath the foundation of change is constant. It is the pillar of flow. How odd it is, right? How can you have a pillar of flow when change is constant? Doesn't even feel right when you think about it. Well, it doesn't feel right because of whatever meaning we've given to flow. When change is constant, the flow that actually keeps you in flow is being plugged into the rhythm of you. Nothing outside of you can keep you in flow. Nothing. Nothing. Not even the love of your pets. Not even the love of anything. You recognizing your own flow is what keeps you in flow. Everything else rises to meet you in that space. And your pets are such a good indicator of, they literally mirror your world. If you are a little bit out of sorts, your dog doesn't go out of control. It might actually become quiet, or it might, come and love on you a lot. But if you give yourself the anchor of your dog behaving in a certain way for you to return to flow, that starts to create the anxiety that dogs sometimes have. The depression in dogs, in pet dogs, that is also on the rise across the world. So this pillar of flow is really an acceptance that the flow that under, underpins the foundation of change and constant is you finding that flow, which is your flow. I'm not asking you to find the flow within you. I'm saying you find the flow that is your flow, and you flow with that. And that may mean, you know, having certain things around that trigger you. And you don't have to hold them there. It's just that they're there and they trigger you. Well, rather than beating yourself up, which takes you out of your flow, well, you just acknowledge, okay, those sort of things really trigger me. I've not been able to get over that. And so it is. What this is doing, this pillar is a really big one, because what it does is it gives you that foundation of flow in any environment, in any situation. I mean, look at what has gone on in the world outside of you, and look at what has gone on in the world inside of you as a result of all of this stuff that is playing out. Well, you're still here. You may not have been comfortable all the time. And you're still here. So there is a flow that is your flow, that is unique to you. When you start getting into the flow of you, you stop giving the power of you being in flow to anything outside of you. Including your relationships. Your partner doesn't get you into a frenzy. Well, you do. They do what they do. You give meaning to it, you give reason to it, and you disconnect from your flow, and that is what gets you out of flow. No, nothing outside of you does. Nobody outside of you can ever do that. The fact that you are born, you are in flow. I mean, look at little babies. It was an amazing phenomenon I witnessed yesterday. I was there with my niece and her daughter. So, you know, my granddaughter. She's 18 months old. Right? And she's like, one thing I noticed was when she's awake, she's on the move. And I thought, wow, if I actually want to lose weight, I just have to mirror her, you know, and be moving. And then there she is, she's walking around, and then she'll just squat and pick something up, and she'll be sitting in that squat position for such a long time. Like, oh my God, I can barely even bend my knees, let alone just squat at the drop of a hat. But I realized that she's moving all the time, and that enables her to do that. Now, the other thing that I witnessed was she's got these toy tables and stuff, and she decides to move it. So she picks up this table. This table, you know, the top of the table comes to her shoulder length, right? Can you imagine even picking up something, however light it may be, where it is as large as where the top of the table comes to your shoulder length? You know, she can barely get her hands around it. She still picks it up. She moves it across the room and puts it somewhere else. You know, and I was just thinking, you know, we look at a structure like that and we think we can't do it, so we don't even attempt it. But really the flow that we are, if we are in our flow, will be in flow. This little 18-month-old is in flow. This table is coming in the way of her being able to run around with her toys. So she, rather than coming to me and crying to pick it up, she just picks it up and moves it to another part of the room, toddling away. Because in her mind, she's in flow. It doesn't even occur to her that she can't do it, and she does it. And we get so wowed by stories of, you know, this mom who moves the truck away from her, from this huge truck that had hit the leg of a child. There's a story like that. Well, where does that come from? It's not a one-off. Our flow is what connects us to the core strength of what we possess within us. It's unwavering. That is a part of the change that we are experiencing, and we experience it every day. If you engage with this pillar of the foundation of change is constant, you will get more and more and more present to that power that is you. Notice my words. I am not saying the power within you. I am not saying the flow within you. I am saying the flow that you are. Witness the power that is you. And the fourth pillar, which gives us the solidity for this foundation where change is constant. The fourth pillar is it is the pillar of rejoicing. So much of our moans and groans and complaints and problems are attributed to the fact that we prepared for this and look, everything changed. And now we're going to start all over again. I mean, just imagine how many times have each one of us done that, including me. Like, such a waste. Here we go, start over again. Well, what if you noticed how you feel? Experience. Look, in my world, you don't let go of anything. You acknowledge it. You receive your experience, and you accept where you are at with it. And that keeps you in the knowing that you are the all-powerful one. You are the creator of your world. And the creator creates. Knowing that in its creation, the creation itself can regenerate itself. The creator does not need to be creating fixes. And you are the essence of the creator. So even if something occurs that feels like, oh my God, everything's falling apart, I prepared so hard for this, and now I'm going to work so very hard again. Well, what if you don't? What if you just understand that, okay, whatever occurred was something that built up this Pilates-style micro muscles of an inner knowingness, which is going to serve you going forward. So celebrate. And at a pillar level, so one of the 4 pillars is the pillar of rejoicing. So what if you actually took a micro moment in each moment to find something to rejoice? And really all we have to do is to do that. The universe that already does the multiplier effect, that is its modus operandi, will go ahead and multiply that by giving you so many reasons. So your micro moments will become the moment itself. And literally every moment you'll be operating from a state of being the moment. And remember, a moment is only a moment of miracles. There are only miracles that exist in a moment. There is no past, there is no future. There is only the moment. And in each moment, while you're breathing, you have the state of life, your heart is singing. And what does that mean? When your heart sings, which means your heart is beating, there is a miracle here. That's why it's singing. And you can find it. Don't just find it, rejoice in it. And that's this commandment. at a foundation level, change is constant. How lucky are we to actually be living in this world and having a good expanse of time for the rest of our life, to experience this foundation of change is constant. Over to you, Catherine, for questions.
Wow. Okay, Mynoo, that was a lot. That was a lot of information. It's amazing that these 4 pillars of this third commandment is so rich. And I find that we just now need to practice life with this wisdom. You know, it doesn't always just come naturally.
Well, what I would say, Catherine, is life is a state. It's a state where an organism is breathing. So that state we have, right? What it gives you an opportunity to do is to practice aliveness.
Love that. Well, I have a wonderful question that came from Sean, and he asked it last week. We didn't have time to address it, so we probably only have time for one. So I thought this was the most appropriate one. And I'll just read to you that question just to refresh your memory on that, Mynoo. Sean asked, I connect fully about the power of resolve. I appreciated your advice to not panic as you are discovering what your resolve is about. When in that space, I can have conflicting messages in my experience, discovering what makes my heart sing, or even trusting the experience. So it can lead to overanalyzing or inaction or even shutting down. So when that happens, I simply take a step, regardless of whether it makes my heart sing or not, and I go from there. It's a bit of a hit or miss. Is that all right? Perhaps is there a reset of sorts?
Well, many layers to this question. So the first response that I'm getting is, actually these 4 pillars answer the different layers in this question. So here's what is choosing to come through to support like an overarching response to this question. And the first one is a knowingness that, we are always resolved about something. What occurs in your life is what you are resolved about. That's how you know what you're resolved about. Now, you can get conscious about it and consciously choose a resolve. And when you consciously choose a resolve, like I have consciously chosen, and my resolve is that humans in humanity know that expecting and accepting miracles are their norm. And they know how to activate it for themselves. That's my resolve. Now, once you consciously, so the first piece to know is you're always resolved about something. And for you to know what you're resolved about, look at what's going on in your life. When you choose to become conscious about it, and those of you who've done the journey into miracles, you know you've connected to your source, and your source mastery is your first access point to that resolve. Those of you who've been a part of the business collective, you've connected to your innate vibe, which is an even deeper level of understanding. So you know that that is what you're resolved about. And regardless of whether you've done these programs or not, you can get conscious about whatever it is that you choose to be resolved about, in which case, regardless of whatever is occurring, you may be experiencing a breakdown of trust and, questioning going on in your mind. Anytime you feel any energies that are spinning a little bit out of control, you only need to remain connected to your body. Your body is your indicator. Your body will get into a little bit of yuckiness somewhere. The moment that bit of yuckiness starts to appear, interrupt your pattern and ask the question, so what? So what if I don't trust this? So what if it wasn't this way? Well, seriously, so what? I'm still here. So when you are resolved and you've created a conscious level resolve, the moment I go into, anything, like when the diagnosis of me having COVID was positive, for a moment it was like, I should be getting this. I went into the should and should nots, right? And then I'm resolved about humans and humanity, knowing that expecting and accepting miracles are their norm. The moment I plugged into my resolve, I went into, okay, so what? I'm COVID positive. And then suddenly it had no power over me. I did develop a very healthy respect for the virus load buildup, that those people who have this experience, and how that may be putting them out of their center. It gave me the resilience and the resolve to show up, 4 times a week online. We were also in the middle of our journey into miracles at the time. And I was showing up every single day for 3 hours at a stretch. But the so what, coming from the connection that I have to my resolve, allowed me to remain in my center regardless, no matter what. The resolve just never wavered, never diminished. And after we finished the journey to miracles, I chose to only show up online on my online commitments and allowed the rest of the time for my body to just recalibrate in the way it wanted to. So my response to, Sean's question would be, first, acknowledge whatever is occurring in your life you're resolved about. So the moment you go into questioning trust and it takes you off your game, well, you're resolved about that. That's why it takes you off your game. Now, once you get that, rather than beating yourself up, notice it, unconditionally accept what is. Sean, your source master, you step into that as your resolve and do it in a conscious way. And from that point on, so what? To break your patterns and return to source. So with that, it's time to complete our session. Over to you, Catherine. You're muted.
Oh, there we go. Wow, thank you so much. I know that's something that even though we've all practiced, many of us have been practicing doing this work time and time again, it's just so helpful for that reminder and that allowing, which is so amazing. It just gives us a break. Thank you so much, Mynoo, and thank you all for coming tonight. It was amazing, the third commandment. I can't wait to be part of the fourth next Thursday. And I think we want to hear some words. Mynoo, what would you like for people to post?
Whatever it is that they are present to, so that we anchor the completion of this commandment. We are all now really big holographic presences of our being now. So every word that you place here literally holographically expands and touches all of those different beings that we have been connecting with over this last several weeks and people that you've connected with throughout your life. So let's get that vibe up.
Yes. So let's see what words we have coming in. We have perfect. Thank you. Love to always return to source. So powerful and enlightening. Rejoice. Accepting the miracles of Mother Nature. Wow, love that one. Magnificence. Resolve to remain in peace. Rejoicing in the moment. Aware and awake. Rejoice. Resolved in love. Knowingness that surpasses trust. Present to the presence. Complete acceptance. Inner joy and peace. With a few emojis in there too. Flowing like water around the stones of change in the stream. I'm high on holographs. Love that one, Danette. Oh my goodness. Joy, resolve, and love. Enlivening. That would be from Dear Daya. I love her words. And gratitude and peace. Beautiful understanding received to enjoy my life. Thank you, Mynoo. Little double X there. I will be in touch. And we have energized and in flow. So grateful to be present. Rock and roll, baby.
I tend to that.
And just done. We all need a little of that. Truth, gratitude, and resolve. Excitement, processing, and gratitude. One with Source. And I think with that, we are all in.
Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you, Mynoo. You know, it's so amazing. Each time we get more depth, more juiciness, more of the yummy. I love it. Thank you so much for doing this for us every single week.
You're so welcome. How wonderful wisdom of the moment. Thank you all. It's
Thank you.
To end the session, but thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you right here next week.
See you.